Everybody, this is Perch. This is a topic. I brought this up before, and man, I got flamed for it. People didn't like to hear it. So I'm going to try it again because I like the hate. But please, I think, in listening to this, I'll try and word this in such a way that a bunch of people being super angry won't actually listen to the video. They'll just get angry from the title and off they go. Um, Crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding has a lot of challenges to be a successful part of the business, to be a viable long-term kind of option. I don't think crowdfunding is an ongoing thing. I think it's a patch. I think crowdfunding is a way of circumventing a market which is going through a number of kind of radical changes, doesn't know quite what to do with itself, has some weird gatekeepers at various places trying to prevent certain things from happening, is also tied to a bunch of factors way outside its control around other forces with retail and everything else. There's a bunch of reasons why retail and the direct market and all of these things are going through some pretty radical changes. And so crowdfunding as an option for comics became a good way to kind of get yourself out of that mess, go to direct to consumer, be able to speak directly to a market, be able to get some products out, lower the bar to entry to basically your own skill of being able to put something out. Doesn't matter who you are, you can do it. And basically, find ways to get your product into the hands of others. But I do not believe that crowdfunding is something that 20 years from now is going to be running the industry. I don't think that's true at all. And I think there's tons of data, and hear it from me, the guy who often throws out a lot of data. It's not going to happen. The curves are going the wrong way in almost every case for crowdfunding to be a long-term thing. So I brought this up before, and what's weird about this is lots of people do crowdfunding. There's Indiegogo, there's Kickstarter, there's a variety of creators that do it. But when you say something like, I don't think crowdfunding is the be-all, end-all of comics, people assume you're talking about their favorite person, whoever that is. It's like you're insulting my person, and therefore you're wrong, you suck, forgetting that there's a lot of different people doing crowdfunding of all different ideologies and comics and everything else. I mean, all very different. There's a Richard Meyer doing crowdfunding campaigns. There is a Joe Glass doing crowdfunding campaigns. Those are different people with very different books, very different properties, very different audiences, all the rest. And so, just, I don't know. To me, that's common sense. I don't know what we're arguing about. But this, one of those people, Richard Meyer on his channel, did this video talking about, optimal and suboptimal. Basically, I've heard it described a couple of ways. The newsstand being the most optimal, or hyper optimal, or whatever happens, the most natural way to get a product like comics out to the market. And that is true. The newsstand, the comics and what they are in terms of the price point and the digest size. Now, I mean, when I say digest, I don't mean strictly the Archie format. I mean like a floppy comic. I mean something smaller, some bite-sized piece of entertainment. It works in a business market when it's as many places as possible. That's when it's better off. That kind of product suffers when it's in a niche market, when it's a smaller place. It's like gum. Gum. Like, nobody loves gum. Like, you chew it. Some people chew it for a variety of reasons. Maybe because they're trying to get over smoking. Maybe they like the flavor. Maybe they just, they're not like me and do videos in the car all the time, so they need their mouth to have something to do. I don't know what. People buy gum. If you suddenly had to go to a gum store, like a place that just sold gum, in order to buy it, you would see the sales plummet because nobody would go and seek out, very few people go and seek out gum. Gum is a cheap, impulse buy. When it's at just in a grocery store, it's there. When you go to the grocery store, you're usually not thinking, hey, I need to go pick up some gum. You're buying pizza or meat or vegetables or, like me, whiskey, whatever it is you're buying that. And you're like, oh, I guess I'll get some gum. That's where comics thrived the most, is when it was something like that, when it was omnipresent. They were everywhere. You're probably going to these places for a different purpose, and then either you or maybe your kids stumble around comics, and that's where it goes. That's why the newsstand was that comics is built for the newsstand. And then, again, for a variety of reasons, comics made their way to the direct market, made sense at the time. But kind of like crowdfunding, the direct market was really a patch for a changing situation in the newsstand. Buying habits and the newsstand itself was altering, it was shifting. And so the direct market became a viable way to go about it. But the direct market it's like that. It's like a specialty store for gum. It's going to cut into the audience pretty dramatically, and it did. And so sales went down. We see recognition go down over time. We see new people being brought into comics fading because, of course, you're seeing them in less places, so there's less visibility. Fewer people know they exist. And so you're seeing the slow erosion and death of comics in the direct market. And on top of all that, by the way, you have the situation that Jeff Thorne brought up, which is correct. So you have the situation that Jeff Thorne brought up, which is correct, which is the direct market also created a certain clientele that was very specific. And so when you come around and you say, hey, we want to, find this new audience, sell these comics to new people, but we're going to sell them in the exact same channel that we created that caters to a very different set of people, that's not going to work. So that's why the direct market is optimal, probably trending on suboptimal. It's optimal, but it has a shelf life to it. Unless the direct market can have a heavy influx of cash in order to make itself relevant in the marketplace, it's going to struggle, and it's going to turn from optimal to suboptimal, which it's doing right now. So then along comes crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is, like I said, it's got a lot of benefits to it. You're not going to hear me say crowdfunding is bad, a mistake, people shouldn't do it. Not at all. It's a good thing. But like the direct market, it has a definite shelf life. It has all the same problems with visibility. It's very much built on a personality, and which is kind of the problem. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you want the products to speak for themselves. You want the product to be the thing on the shelf. You want the product to be what's selling. And crowdfunding campaigns are going to more heavily weight the personality. The personality is what's going to bring people to the table. That's why the people who do live streams, who do more of a show about themselves, and I'm not saying this is a negative, that's going to lead to more attention. It's going to, that over time, that's what's going to become the dominating factor. And so then the question is, are people showing up for the show, or are they showing up for the comics? They may be there because of the comics, but it's the show that's bringing them to the table. That becomes the problem you have to overcome. Not impossible, but it is a problem. And the challenge with crowdfunding is it's facing a bit of a fork in the road. And unfortunately, the comics industry had this problem too. There was a moment in time where it's like, okay, are we building a comics business? A business being something that's got to grow and evolve over time, that's going to have to, all the complexities about a business. Think about EBITDA and return on investment and all these kinds of more financial terms. Or do we want to lean into the creative side of this? Do we want to make it more of a boutique business? And comics chose the boutique business. It leaned into the idea of saying, hey, we'd love to have healthcare and all these things for our workers, but we also, comic professionals aren't going to want to go to an office or work at a job like that. So, we need to have more creative freedom. We need to, there was a number of times that even owned by a Disney and an AT&T, in fact, I would argue that being owned by Disney allowed this little kind of pocket world to basically continue uninterrupted. I mean, Marvel had several moments where there should have been interception into their business, but there wasn't. First, you had them owned by Disney, so they kind of hid under there. And then on top of that, you had their characters and their IP get really popular with the movies. And thus, there was even less motivation to go in and tinker with the comics. It weirdly went from, hey, this is an important thing, but we kind of need to leave it to the creatives to do what they do, to, hey, this is a really important thing, but not the comics are really tiny. Let's focus on the important thing, which is the movies, and leave them alone. And it just left, it's put Marvel in a state of arrested development. That's the problem. And DC is very much on that same track. So it's not living, it's not dying either. It's just kind of suspended animation. But crowdfunding is going through a similar choice. Does it want to be a business, or does it want to be more of a personality, more entertainment based? And the money is going to favor the entertainment based, at least in the short term. It's also, one of the biggest things about crowdfunding that's its benefit, it's positive, but also its failure is that it allows you as an individual to just go out and do it yourself. You don't need to talk to another company. You can do it on your own, and that's awesome. It allows people to just get started. But over time, you do need people to work together. You need people to be able to create structure. You need people to be able to, find efficiencies of scale of how printing can be done, and how marketing can be done, and how visibility can be done, and all the rest. And so suddenly, your benefit, the benefit of just being able to get started without a lot of overhead, turns into a bit of a flaw because you can no longer scale beyond your own capabilities. Eventually, people do need to start working together. And no, I don't mean just like tweeting out campaigns for each other as kind of a friendly thing. I mean actual business. How do a bunch of these groups take the audience that they've been able to make, and how do they start, talking to people who could distribute those books overseas? The Brazilian market is blowing up. No, I'm not talking about Yara Fleur. I'm talking that market is very favorable to graphic novels and indie stuff right now. Is anybody who's running a crowdfunding campaign, do they have a pipeline in there? Are they trying to figure out how to get things into a place where the newsstand might actually have a chance of coming back? There's a lot of these different factors, and this is where, when you're a business and you're a startup, one of the challenges you have is it becomes your ability to scale that is the problem. And this is where crowdfunding's at. It's going to struggle with scale unless it can put some formality behind it. But the very nature of kind of crowdfunding almost avoids it. Again, I give him a lot of credit for doing it. Richard put up his numbers, and there's a spreadsheet and his graphs, and that's awesome. It's kind of weird because that's what my spreadsheets look like too. It's like, that's nice. But you can see the numbers. You can't deny the numbers are not favorable here for crowdfunding. Some people will make money off of it. Some people continue to make money off it. I'm not saying the bottom's dropping out from under it, but the opportunity for a bunch of people to come in and kind of make money at this thing will shrink. And it's because the market is moving on. There was something new. It moved some audience. Now the audience is kind of looking for something else, and it's that next step that needs to be taken for it to get anywhere. Anyway, last time I said this, man, people got pissed off. So maybe it'll happen again this time. It dawns on me I need to talk a lot more about this, and so I will do it. So you got more of this to come in the future. Anyway, let me know your initial thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for listening.